She was the
Mhm,
director level. That's
mhm.
you're talking like we're talking like $200,000 a year minimum salary. And
Right.
she was running the whole place, doing, deciding who's going to be on the team, and I didn't end up working for that company. But she ends up she has a final say. And not only she has a final say on that, she's responsible for all kinds of the business that's going on with that company. So she's a
Right.
very important person in that company, you
Mhm.
know. hmm and
'Cause
believe me, I don't have working in technology, you wouldn't think there was a racial problem anywhere in this country.
because it's
Back in the
not.
1960s,
Yeah,
It really isn't.
exactly.
Like, when you really think about it, I don't wanna be in technology. That doesn't mean that I can't be. It's just that I'm artistically gifted when it comes down to doing things. This is what I love doing. So I
Yeah,
choose
and
to
you're
work my way.
entrepreneurial too. You're an
Huh?
entrepreneur too. You're an
Yeah,
entrepreneur
and I'm an
too.
entrepreneur too. So it's not
Mm.
like I'm just sitting on my dumbs and doing nothing. Like I'm building something here, and it takes work, and it takes a hell of a lot of time sometimes. Sometimes it takes off, sometimes it, trickles in. But I think I know what I'm doing now, and my
Yep.
channel.
They don't take that statistic into consideration too when they're talking about jobs, right? They're
No,
talking
they
about
don't.
jobs. Yeah, the entrepreneurs that are out there, there are many, 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 many black entrepreneurs that are out there just doing great work today and having lots of success.
And hiring people that are Asian, white, Hispanic, and all that, what I'm saying? Like, they're doing a lot of hiring. I mean, Damian John is one. Look at Tyler Perry at two. You know what I'm saying? They're doing a ton of hiring. They're hiring a crap, what's the Gambino? What is his freaking
Martin
name?
Scorsese.
Ugh. Anyway, there's a lot of black celebrities out there, black artists, and they hire a crap ton of people. Like, come on, you can't tell me that they're focused on the color. No, are you qualified? Let's go. We got work to do.
Alrighty.
when admission to colleges in Malaysia were by qualifications. The Chinese, during the 1960s, received 408 degrees in engineering. The Malay majority received 4. So we're talking about 100 to 1, larger than 100 to 1 difference. And there's no way in the world the Chinese could discriminate against the Malays who run the universities and who also run the government that controls the university.
Right. I know a little about Malaysia, having spent some time there, and I know that the Chinese are a minority in Malaysia, a highly successful minority as it happens economically. So we've touched a little bit here on another chapter, which is racial fallacies. And in that chapter, you make an arresting point, which is that the economic progress of Black Americans was actually more rapid in that in their movement into the middle class before many of the social welfare programs of the 1960s were put in place. Why don't you elaborate on that?
Yes, because what people are taught in the schools and are saying in the media that the 1960s was what got the blacks out of poverty and into the professional things, and that they use a reasoning that ruins a lot of other arguments. They simply start at 1960 and show what happens afterwards. But of course, the question is what happened before 1960. And from 1940 to 1960, the poverty rate of blacks fell from 87% to 47% prior to the 1960s. In terms of moving into professional careers, the blacks in professional careers doubled in the decade immediately preceding the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Black children raised by single-parent families were 17% in 1940. After these wonderful programs of the 1960s, that quadrupled to 68%. You can run through all sorts of things that are retrogressions.
That's interesting. So, arguably, if we hadn't had many of those programs, we would have had more rapid social progress. That's the implication of that point, I think.
Yes, and that's not the only thing that changed for the worse. But in the country as a whole, and including blacks, the homicide rates in the United States had gone down every decade for 3 consecutive decades. And by the early 1960s, the homicide rate was just under half of what it had been in 1934. In came all these wonderful criminal law changes by the Supreme Court. Immediately, from 1963 to 1973, the homicide rate doubled. And one of the fascinating things about high IQ, clever people is that they have so many ways of evading plain evidence that people of lesser would not have it.
Smart people being dumb, yes.
Right.
And my father used to say that about me sometimes. One of the things that's fascinating and runs through your book, and of course your book Ethnic America includes this too, is the differences in groups, in group performance, ethnic groups, for example. And they have a lot to do, you describe about how put much emphasis that they put on education, for example, what kind of professions they go into, the accumulated intellectual capital and experience that a group gets. And you mentioned the fact that German Americans, Germans around the world do extremely well in the beer industry. They tend to dominate it, in fact. And they do that in part because they've been doing it for about 1,000 years. They're good at it.
You do something for 1,000 years, eventually you get the hang of it.
I mean, that explains a lot of the differences that kind of history and
That
group
pause,
cultural focus tends to explain.
that explains so much. Oh man, so much.
Right.
Wow.
There's a lot of tradition there too. Something that we don't have too much of in America today, but in other countries around the world, trades and crafts and family businesses are handed down. You're born into a family, you're taught the business, you're taught the trade. You're taught by masters, people who are good at what they do, good
Mhm.
at business, good at whatever craft they make or whatever service they provide, and they teach their children, right? That's going back to the importance of family and why families are so powerful and so strong, and why a country like the U.S. and the state that it's in, the corrupt state that it's in, wants to destroy those families, wants to give every opportunity for those families to be torn apart, the cycle of abuse to get that enables a cycle of control, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's starting to make a lot of sense, and that's the power of what Thomas Sowell gives us through his wisdom, is that he points these things out in a way that all of us can easily digest and understand.
Right. Love that. Continue.
A lot of the differences in American life, not discrimination per se.
Absolutely. And if you look at it internationally, it's even more clear. Because there's always the notion that in this particular society, there are special reasons why these groups do this and someone else does something else. But if you take the same group and study what happened to them in radically different kinds of societies, in the case of the Germans, I mean, they dominated the beer industry in Latin America. They dominated in Australia. They created the famous beer in China. So you can't say that the immediate surroundings are what carry the weight.
Yeah, Qingdao beer in China was a favorite of mine when I was living over there, and I didn't know until your book that it had actually been
That's funny.
produced by the Germans, but it makes perfect sense. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll be back talking with Dr. Thomas Sowell about social justice fallacies when we come back. Don't forget fallacies. Another fallacy you talk about is called the chess piece fallacies. And I guess you mean that the assumption that human beings are chess pieces and that they behave like you want them to. You can move them around as if they were on a chessboard. But of course, human beings aren't chess pieces. Give us an example or two.
Oh, my heavens. Well, one of the areas, of course, is in taxation. There are people out there who think that the government needs more money and we just get the rich to pay their undefined tax fair share. And they act as if the rich are just going to stand there and do nothing while the government is going to take their money. And of course, in the globalized age today, especially, where you can transfer vast sums of money with a click of a computer mouse, that's not going to work. One of the things that drives me crazy are people who talk about tax cuts for the rich. People who want to cut the taxes for the rich are basing their reasoning on the belief that the greater wealth remaining in the hands of the rich will somehow trickle down to others. It drives me crazy. And for years, I have defied anybody to name any person outside of an insane asylum who ever had that theory. And to this day, no one has come up with a single example. The whole thing was that if you have extremely high rates, such as 73% at the beginning of the 1920s, people will simply put their money into tax-exempt bonds and pay nothing. And the way that the Coolidge administration got more money out of high-income people was by lowering the tax rate to 25%. And then people took their money out because they could make a greater killing in the market. And when they took it out, the government collected more taxes. But that was not just a one-shot deal. That's happened in a number of places when the tax rate and the tax revenues do not automatically move in the same direction. And often they move in the opposite direction.
Well, we're seeing that now in the United States as you get migration out of high tax states to low tax, or in some cases, no state income tax states like Texas or Florida, Tennessee. And you can see that movement in people and in incomes. It's very significant. It's affecting places like New York. You also mentioned minimum wage laws as being another example of a chess piece fallacy. Explain that.
It's astonishing because there's so much data on this that it's amazing that there's still a controversy. When you raise minimum wage above what it would be an ordinary supply and demand, that causes more people to apply for jobs because they don't remain the same. They try to get the jobs. But the employers now have an incentive not to hire as much labor as before. And so you create a chronic surplus of job applicants. And you can see that in the statistical data. When the minimum wage was neglected for a number of years and was obsolete because of inflation, the income of Black and white teenagers was the same, and it was a fraction of what it is today. So that as they raised the minimum wage, employers found ways of not hiring as much labor.
Yeah, and you see that in so many different aspects of economic life in particular. You attribute a lot of these fallacies to the mistaken views of intellectuals and American elites, global elites, who you would think with the time and opportunity to read and to learn and to read history would be best positioned not to make these kinds of mistakes, right? So why are, in your view, are intellectuals so prone to these social justice fallacies?
That's a tough one, but the empirical fact that they are goes back at least as far as the 18th century. And many of the arguments that they use today are basically rehashes of what was said over the past 2 centuries. It's an enormously self-flattering view of the world that there they are, the Olympian elite, helping the downtrodden and preempting the decisions that people make in their own life because they're so sure that the decisions that they would impose are superior. And apparently for some people, it's sufficient if there's a consensus of the elites. That's treated as if it's an established fact.
Going back to the old Joseph Schumpeter.
I just want to cut in here for a minute and say something.
Wow. Wow.
I don't think
Mind blown.
right. I don't think they have a clue what's best for us. I think they have a clue what's best for them. How's it going, Caitlin? They and this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, myself and Talking Trash and Truths have a show called Old School Watch Party Sundays, and we'll be covering the fluoridation of water and the GMO of seeds and our food supply. And these are decisions again being made by the elites that are not in our best interest. So I encourage everybody to come check us out this weekend and watch these with us because they're going to be eye-opening. Again, more decisions being made by the elitists that are out there, the global controlling class, as I call them, and that these decisions aren't based in our best interest. And this is why we need to understand what these decisions are and who these people are, and remove the enablement that give them the power to lead this corrupt society, to implement the corruption in this society, I should say.
Schumpeter, the economist's view in the 20th century, that when you get a society that starts producing wealth, it creates an intellectual class that has a certain kind of resentment against that success and wealth, and then reacts against it with these kinds of observations.
I think he's onto something because there's a constant complaint that people that don't have any great talent, education, and so forth are making vastly more money than the people who may be the leading scholar in their field. They don't realize that the fact that they are the leading scholar in their field doesn't mean that they have even minimal competence in any number of other fields.
Well, I wonder, do you worry at all about inequality?
Right. That doesn't make, like, you don't have the different senses that come along with being, starting from the bottom. You don't have those things, I don't think, because like, there's no formula to make everything right. Does that make any sense? Like, what's the formula to make everything equal? Like, how do you do that?
Well, equal opportunity, right, That's one thing. That's freedom.
Right.
But this idea of equal outcome, right? That's the major fallacy here. That's the mind control, because all that does is create less equality,
Right.
and it destroys opportunity. I think
Yeah,
that's
it
what
does, because
Dr.
why
Soul's trying
would
to
I
point out.
work just as hard for you? It really does. It does, Oh, and hey, Caitlin, by the way. Yeah, that really, really, really does that.
Hmm. That hits the point.
It definitely does.
Nail in the head.
Mm-mm.
And unequal outcomes, not as a matter per se of social justice, but as at the practical level, where the impact that these unequal outcomes can have on the policies and actions by, say, Congress.
I think political inequalities are pretty dangerous. But when you look at things like vast differences in ages between groups, the Japanese Americans being, more than 20 years older than Mexican Americans, people who are 20 years older usually have higher incomes, whether they are Japanese, Mexican, or whatever.
A lot more wealth, too. A lot more wealth.
Absolutely. So the kinds of disparities people worry about in the United States are nothing if you compare other countries around the world.
So let's step back a bit. And as you look at American life right now, and you were going to promote policies that enhance opportunity for all, the most opportunity for all, what would be the most important policies that you would promote? What would do the most good?
Oh my goodness, get rid of minimum wage law, get rid of politicians making, or any other people, making decisions for other people and paying no price for being wrong. And of course, that's what's happening. What our school situation is that people are out there imposing all kinds of sexual things on children in the schools,
Oh yeah.
believing that they're having a wonderful effect and not paying the slightest attention to the data, which show that, among other things, venereal diseases and teenage pregnancy, all of that was going down before the 1960s when all these programs began. They all immediately turned around and went up, and have gotten worse. They pick children as if they're prisoners of their parents and they're going to rescue them. After doing all these things to give children more rights as they see fit, the suicide rate among children has skyrocketed. But again, the big thing is they are impervious to evidence.
They don't want to look at the evidence. And you did an entire book on school choice, I think, if I'm not mistaken, not long ago. And we promoted it at the Journal as a very important reform that can help to break the monopoly of the public school system that has led to some of these terrible outcomes. I would assume that, is that one of the reforms you promote?
Absolutely. And it's hard to put it in a few words, but some institutions are such that you can get away with doing things that make things worse, and there's nothing to stop you. But if you have a market economy, for example, the mistakes that you make cost you money. It costs you your own money. It doesn't cost the taxpayers money. And the government can do it and waste the taxpayers' money, and that's no incentive to stop doing it.
I want to end with a kind of a big picture question. You've obviously seen a lot of changes in American life over your decades, thinking about these things, good and bad. There seems to be a more pervasive pessimism among the public these days. And I wonder if you think about the course of American society and life. And I wonder if you think that's warranted. Are things worse than they used to be? Or is this one of those, and just another period in American, like many others in American history, when we seem to be down, but we eventually figured out how to move ahead in a better way?
I would say that we should be aware that there is such a thing as a point of no return. In the Roman Empire, there were bad times that the Romans got out of and survived. But eventually, when you just keep persisting in the wrong-headed things, that's when you reach the point of no return. And I have the feeling that we are on that course. And I'm hoping that some of the people who are out there trying to fight against that will have some success.
Well, if you read Social Justice Fallacies by Dr. Thomas Sowell, his new book that we've been discussing here on the podcast, you will have ammunition to fight against, intellectual ammunition, factual ammunition to make the case to fight against those fallacies and the dangerous direction that we are taking on so many areas of American life. Dr. Sowell, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure. Good luck with the book, and thanks for everything you've done for this great country of ours.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, so we got to get this book. We have to
Yep.
get this book. Definitely. Yes, we got to get this book. And Continue on, man, because those are some jaw-dropping facts right there. It just demolished the narrative that's been painted. It's like it really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, we got another one coming up for you. This goes into a lot more detail
Mhm.
and a lot more points of the book. We wanted to give you kind of that interview. I thought gave us a good intro to it, but this one's really going to get into the nitty gritty of it. And this one we get to actually see Dr. Soul, so we'll have a little bit of different layout. But I hope everybody's enjoying it so far, man. I am excited to read this book. I really want to get his entire collection. I just I don't have a real big book collection myself, but if I'm gonna buy some books and I'm gonna
Yeah,
have a
let's
collection
do
in my
let's do a
house,
study on them. Let's do that because
yeah,
why not? I've been planning on doing this forever. So just let's do a study on them. Like every Thursday we do this.
absolutely. And hey, guys, we are gonna do our best to try to get Dr. Soul on the show. That is a
Yeah.
goal of ours,
Yes, it is.
100%. I mean, it would be such an honor and such a a monumental thing to be able to actually speak with Dr. Soul. It would be one of the highlights, I would say,
Because I can
of
ask him questions from the
uh,
hood.
my life. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like, yo, you have no idea how hard you hit right there by saying, you know, we gonna see it. You gonna see what I'm talking about. I even did a little
Mhm.
cute little skit to show you how I felt about it when I saw it the first time. But I was ready for it. I didn't post it yet, but I was ready for it.
All right, cool. I can't wait to see it. There we go. Let's get to the next one here. We're gonna have a little bit of an introduction again, and away we go. Now you probably recognize this guy here from the Hoover Institute. He does a lot of interviews with Dr. Soul. He's a really great interviewer.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Here we go.
Two events in the life of today's guest. He just turned 93 and he just published his latest book,
93
Thomas
years.
Sowell on
Mhm.
Uncommon Knowledge Now.
Peter Robbins. That's it.
Yeah. I really like how they do it too.
Welcome to Uncommon
Mhm.
Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. After growing up in Harlem, Thomas Sowell served in the United States Marine Corps, then received an undergraduate degree from Harvard, a master's degree from Columbia, a doctorate from the University of Chicago. After teaching at universities that included Cornell, Brandeis, and UCLA, Dr. Sowell became a fellow at the Hoover Institution in 1977. Thomas Sowell is the author of some 40 books,
Okay,
including
let's just
his
stop right
newest
there for
volume.
those of you that want to say you don't agree with Thomas. He's the author of 40 books. Okay. 70?
Mhm.
How many books? 40, you say?
40. 40
40. How,
some.
how many of you guys got through your first one and that's your memoirs? You still working on it, right? Okay, just let you know. That's how smart this dude is. He wrote 40 books.
I mean,
Okay.
not only that, he served his country. He's got multiple degrees,
Yeah.
and he's an esteemed. He's probably, like I said, he's one of the most important intellectuals of our time. And I don't think the intellectual is probably not even doing him justice. He's one of the most important people of our times.
Basically, if you apply yourself, you can get there. Like, I mean, his whole freaking aura demolishes the thing that you can't make it as a black. No, yes, you can. In any way, any shape, flash, whatever way you want to, just go for it. Is it easy? Heck no. Oh boy, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a rough ride. This man had to go. He had to serve. He had to go
Yep.
to how many colleges? Like he's like, I don't think he was this smart when he was a kid. Shoot.
Yep. Well, hey,
David.
and by the way, I have a playlist out there called Repairing History, which is the prequel, I guess, to
Oh yeah,
this
yeah,
show
yeah.
right here.
Mhm.
And that I run through all that. The second episode of that series is all about just about Thomas Sowell. So you can watch that and get his full history, broken down. Lots of people in that documentary, including Eric July of Backwards, man, awesome dude. And so just it's an enjoyable watch. So I hope you guys will check out that playlist and you get the background on a lot of Thomas Sowell's work. And we'll just keep going with what he's doing right now. Here we go.
Social Justice Fallacies. And this past spring, he turned 93. Tom, welcome back to Uncommon Knowledge.
Oh, good being here.
You know,
What's
I
up,
can't
Tony?
help thinking, reading your background, if only you'd been a little bit more industrious, you might have been able to make a name for yourself. Social justice. Dr. Martin Luther King in 1963, quote, I have a dream.
My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
And you write, Dr. King's message was equal opportunity for individuals, regardless of race. In the years that followed, the goal changed to equal outcomes for groups. What now rose to dominance was the social justice agenda. If the social justice, those backing the social justice agenda, could have everything they wanted, what would the country look like?
We'd be killing each other.
All right. Can you give me intermediate steps? In other words, what is the social justice agenda? What do they want?
They want everybody to have equal outcomes, or as close as they can get to it. Unfortunately, you don't have the preconditions for that. Even in the same family, one of the examples I use in the book is among 5-child families,
Right.
the National Merit finalist is the firstborn just over half the time. That is more often than the other 4 siblings combined. Right. The fifthborn is 6% of the time. And so it was even where you have almost ideal conditions. They're born to the same parents, raised under the same roof, and they're not the same.
Because all kinds of things matter, including birth order.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, you take on various fallacies here. Let's take on a couple of them. The equal chances fallacy. Even in a society, I'm quoting you, social justice fallacies, even in a society with equal opportunity, people from different backgrounds do not necessarily even want to do the same things. In American sports, Blacks are very overrepresented in professional basketball, whites in professional tennis, and Hispanics in Major League Baseball. Why is that telling?
Because the implicit assumption, and sometimes explicit assumption, is that in a world where everything was fair, where everyone was treated fairly, you would have things would be representative of the population demographics as a whole and all these various activities. Right. Imagine a Black kid born in Harlem, and he's born with a body identical to that of Rudolph Nureyev, the great ballet dancer. There's the odds are 1,000 to 1 that he'll become a ballet dancer, much less another Rudolph Nureyev. I mean, he would be looked at strangely by all his friends in the neighborhood if he even wanted to do that.
What you mean?
Chances are he wouldn't even think about it.
Right. Right. So you mean to say that when you tried out for the Brooklyn Dodgers, you tried out for the pitching position in the Brooklyn Dodgers, and they didn't hire you, you were not being discriminated against?
Actually, I was trying out for first base, and the real reason I messed up was that my position was center field. But in order to be a good center fielder, I need hours and hours of practice. And it was a very bad spring. I got very little practice, and so I figured at least I won't go out and make an idiot of myself in center field. So I made an idiot of myself at first base.
Right.
Now, I just want to stop
Chess piece.
real quick and just say, did you guys glance over that part where he was saying, imagine if you grew up in the hood being a guy that wants to dance in tights? Did anybody just glance over that? Like, I created a whole friggin' short just because of that, because it hit me hard. It hit me so hard that I actually created a short. So you guys ready to see this short? Oh
man.
boy, let me go ahead and put it up there. my artisticness. Um,
Oh yeah, by the way, we're at a break here for a second. Let me just give a shout out to all the rewatch crew. Thank you so much for
yeah, yeah,
rewatching.
yeah.
Man, you guys mean a lot to us. Hope to see you at a live someday. But thank you for taking the time to rewatch. It means so much to us.
Best Yes. defense against equal outcome I've ever heard in my life. Is it working well?
Imagine a black kid born in Harlem, and he's born with a body
All right, it's not working
identical to
properly.
that of Rudolph Nureyev, the great.
Oh. So let's try to share my screen. Let's do it that way. Okay, let's try that.
Imagine a black
All right.
kid born in.
This is the best defense against equal outcome I've ever heard in my life.
Imagine a black kid born in Harlem, and he's born with a body identical to that of Rudolph Nureyev, the great ballet dancer. There's the odds are 1,000 to 1 that he'll become a ballet dancer, much less another Rudolph Nureyev. I mean, he would be looked at strangely by all his friends in the neighborhood if he even wanted to do that. Chances are he wouldn't even think about it.
Now, for those from my generation, how many of you would be caught alive with those tights? Oh my God.
Dude.
Listen, that's exactly how I felt when he said it. I was
Right?
like, what? Nah. Yeah. Marzon, what's up? Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Now, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people that don't come from the hood, but come from an environment where you couldn't be caught with those things on either. You know what I mean? So you may
Mhm.
not have been come to from the hood, but that doesn't mean nothing. That just means you didn't come to my neck of the woods. It's a very interesting thing, man. To just connect
This
like
is
that.
fallacy.
You
The
ain't
chess
got,
pieces
you
are-
ain't right, Gary. But you know it's true. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. Shame the devil. You know exactly it's true.
fallacy.
Yeah.
Explain that one.
Well, Adam Smith had a very low opinion of abstract theorists who imagine that they can control a whole society with the ease with which one puts chess pieces where you want them on a chessboard. And so there's this notion of this inert mass of people down there, and then the wonderfully brilliant people at the top who ought to be telling them what to do. And there's no thought that, first of all, those at the top don't even know it, the people's individual conditions who are very different from themselves. And when they try to help, they can make things disastrous.
You discuss a theory of justice. This is under knowledge fallacy.
Yes.
A theory of justice, which is in certain circles. Every university in the country, the philosophy department, political science, you'll get it in sociology. This is the big book on social justice, written by John Rawls, philosopher at Harvard. I'm quoting you, Tom. Rawls refers to things that society should arrange. You quote him, arrange. That's the word he uses. And then Tom Sowell says, interior decorators arrange. Governments compel. It is not a subtle distinction.
This part. Oh my God, this part. Oh, y'all in for it on this one. What? This was another short that I was planning on doing, but I went the cute route. I didn't want to spoil this part. This is going to hammer home. Oh, I remember this part when I was watching this. Ooh, let's continue.
Explain that.
Well, if you're going to try to get some kind of result, you have to specify through what kinds of mechanism you expect to get that result. And different mechanisms, whether it's the government, the market, the Red Cross, whatever, they have their own individual things that they're good at and not so good at. And so you can't get the social justice result that you want unless you have the kind of institution that's likely to produce that result. Politics is not that kind of institution.
And yet they all implicitly rely on government.
Yes.
Redistribution of wealth, using legal regimes to adjust the proportions of various groups that get certain jobs. They all rely on government. And what's distinctive about government is it's the one institution that can send you to jail.
Yes.
All right. And that's the point is that's dangerous. We shouldn't want more government, more hands in the power of the politicians.
Yeah, one of
Power
the
in
real
hands of
one of the
politicians.
real problems is that you have people making decisions for which they pay no price when they're wrong, no matter how high a price other people pay. And right now, the homicide rates are beyond anything that were around, let's say, prior to 1960. And I mentioned 1960 in this case because that's when the Supreme Court remade the criminal law. They discovered rights in the Constitution that no one had noticed for over a century, and they were impervious to evidence.
So contrast your neighborhood in Harlem when you were an 8 and 9 and 10-year-old boy with what we see in neighborhoods in Chicago today.
Oh my gosh. People are astonished when I tell them I grew up in Harlem. I can't remember ever hearing a gunshot. And then I've checked with my relatives who grew up in similar neighborhoods in Washington and down in North Carolina. They never heard a gunshot when they were growing up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pause there,
I remember.
please. That's not the story that I got.
Right?
My story is completely different. We used to sleep to gunshots in our neighborhood. Like it just was second nature. I
And what
didn't think
neighborhood, real
nothing of it.
quick, so people know?
It was in East Orange, New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. Those were the places where I heard a lot of gunshots off, just cow, it's just, you know, hell, my freaking father was hemmed up on a grocery shop. He was coming out of the grocery store or the corner store, I should say. Cops jumped out of the car, grabbed him in front of me and my little sister at the time. I was like, what? I don't know, 8, maybe 9. Can't really remember the time, but I remember having that freaking frozen thing on me. So it's like I saw that, but it's like, how do you deal with that? I mean, hindsight 2020 was a drug bust, and he didn't know if they was a part of, you know what I mean? So it was cleaned up real easy. But in the moment, these people are freaking hocked up on adrenaline because of what they're about to do. So anybody looks weird, they're gonna go after him. So it's like he just came out at the wrong time. And I had to deal with that. But as a kid, all you see is cops doing cop stuff. Right? That's all you see. You can't rationalize why is that way. You've never been a cop before. You don't know what it's like to be a police officer. Why don't they do this? Because their life is on the line, fool. That's why. All right. A bruised head is still alive in their opinion. Okay. You bruised, but you're alive. Because and you can't, I mean, I don't like it. That's why we have laws to try to help us out, like with police brutality, if that does come to that point. But at the end of the day, we gotta understand that these guys are trying to protect themselves. So if they can't do you like that, they're going to, mace the hell out of you right off top. If you don't comply, they're just gonna mace you. You know what I mean? Because if we put our hands on you, you know what I'm saying? So just comply at this point. And I don't know how you feel about that. I know how I feel about that. But what are they asking you that they're not supposed to get in the first place? So I don't know. I don't know how to work that one. You know.
Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna be having Strategic Eyes on this Saturday night at 9 p.m. for Winning Saturday Night.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, I'm gonna be talking to him about all kinds of law
Oh, that's
enforcement
going to be a
issues.
great
And
show. I'm gonna tune into that. Tune into
yeah,
that.
man, that's gonna be a lot of fun. I've been on panel with him before, but I've never had a one-on-one interview with him. I have some specific questions for him. I'm gonna talk
Oh
about
yeah, he's a
law
great guy. You
enforcement.
know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
he really
I
is.
mean,
He really
he's
is.
straight. He's straight to the book, which I don't like. You know what I'm saying? But he has to be straight to the book, right? That's his job. But that's the part that I don't really care for too much. But I trust he's a good guy.
Yeah, man. Well, that's what I want to talk about with him. I want to get down to the nuts and bolts of what it's like to do the job he does, what some of his thoughts on it, and what is just what's the mentality you need to have these days in order to do that job and stay alive.
Right.
So, anyways, that'll be Winning Saturday Night, this Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Remember going back to Harlem some years ago to do some research at a high school. And I looked out the window and there's this park there near the high school. And I mentioned in passing that when I lived in Harlem and was a kid, I would take my dog for a walk in that park, and looks of horror came over the students' faces. People have no idea how much has
Uh-oh, what happened?
retrogressed over the
Yeah,
years
probably.
My bad.
in the Black community.
You good?
And,
You're good.
and how much of what progress has been made has not been made by politicians or by charismatic leaders. Uh, if you, one of the things that drives me crazy are people who cite trends over time without deciding where they're going to start the time period. For example, I said that all sorts of wonderful things happened in the 1960s and beyond. And especially for the minorities and the poor and so forth. So what I did, I said, no, well, you can't. If you start the data in 1960, we don't know how much was a result of that and how much was a result of other things. But that also applies in other things. So for example, one simple one, many people say, Ralph Nader wrote this book in 1965, and about the automobile safety and so on. As a result, there were laws by the government, and the death rates went down after that, which is true in itself. But the death rate went down at a far higher rate prior to his writing the book, and this was the continuation of a trend that went back another 20 or 30 years.
Because car manufacturers, when it came right down to it, had very little interest in getting people killed.
Yes,
driving their
you
vehicles.
kill off your customers, your chances are you won't sell as many cars.
Right. The big fallacy, at least I take this as in many ways the heart of the book, racial fallacies. Now, in this section, in this chapter on racial fallacies, you begin, almost all of this book is addressed to the current moment. But in racial fallacies, you start by going back about 100 years.
Yes.
To lay out the progressive position in the 1910s and 20s, and for some years afterward. I'm quoting you. In addressing the massive increase in immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe, this massive increase in immigration begins toward the end of the 19th century and carries on through the 1920s. In addressing the massive increase in immigration, progressives claimed that these new immigrants were inherently, genetically, and therefore permanently inferior. So your argument is that a century or so ago, progressives believed roughly the same about Polish and Italian immigrants that whites in the South had long believed about blacks.
Oh, yes.
All right. Social justice fallacies. I'm going to read a quotation, then I'd like you to take us through this material. With the passing years, more and more evidence undermined the conclusion of the genetic determinists. Jews who had scored low on the 1917 Army Mental Test began to score above the national average on various tests as they became a more English-speaking group. A study showed that black orphans raised by white families had significantly higher average IQs than other black children. Close quote.
Shut up. Stop. Flag on the play. Wait a minute. Hold up. No. We cannot blow past that stat. Can we rewind that one more again? Oh my God.
As they became a more English-speaking group. A study showed that black orphans raised by white families had significantly higher average IQs than other black children. Close quote.
Okay, pause. Let's pull back and reflect. I think that statistic just blew damn near every last one of us out of our chair if we are a black family. Like, okay. Obviously, they know something we don't. Like, maybe we might want to listen just a little bit. You know what I mean? IQ
Uh-huh.
wise, that's crazy. You
So
know
what
what
do
I'm
you
saying? You
what do you
don't
think of that?
say
Like,
given access to education. How would that possibly work? Exactly. Who would have thunk it? You actually showed them how to learn? Really? That's interesting. Ah, you know? God,
so
Lee.
I mean, and they said family, so they said, I guess when you're adopting, it usually isn't one person adopting; it's usually a family adopting. So you got two parents in the home. And you got let's see, we had a comment about education, maybe better education in this
What up,
case.
Paul?
So what do you guys think? What is the reason behind this? You guys think? What do you think?
You asking the chat or you asking me?
I'm asking everybody. You
Okay.
especially, since you can answer.
Well, for me, that's an amazing shift in the right direction. But I'm still based off of the dialogue that we use in today, conversations, right? Case in point, the short that I just did, right? That's
Uh-huh.
a dialogue that I created that a lot of people are going to connect with. A lot of men, okay? A lot of men of certain stature, whether you are the, you know, um, Kevin Hart height level. Yeah. Wait a minute.
Is it because of my size?
Oh no.
Because of my size, yes. Exactly. Right, but the ones that's even above that, you know what I mean? They're within the 5'4" to 5'6" range. You know what I'm saying? They won't be caught in no dang tights either. Like they'll play basketball before they do that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's other better ways to show that you're athletic. Karate. That's another way you can be throwing kicks and stuff. People would tend to push, go for the self defenses instead of something like that. Now, if you was in a different echelon, then maybe you can go for that because that stuff is praised, right? You're a thoroughbred then. You know what I mean? Well, Tommy is this and Tommy is that and Tommy. And that's a thoroughbred. So they're putting all their money riding on that person. And because of that, you get the whole, well, why the firstborn does so well and the other ones don't. You know what I mean? Because this is my money out. Like if I get it wrong with this kid, I'm screwed. Right? I can't get it wrong with this kid. So I get that part. I totally get that.
So, in the century since this, you call them genetic determinants,
Yes.
which is one way of putting it. They were racist.
Yes.
They believed that some races were permanently inferior.
Yes. And should be eliminated.
And we've learned that's total nonsense. But even more than that, we've learned that IQ is malleable. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by malleable.
Well, that is to say that this ranking of
the ranking changes.
Jews
radically.
are stupid in
Yeah.
1917 because they score badly on tests, but they start
Yeah,
to do
on tests
better.
written in English.
Tests written in English. Okay.
And people who
Right.
spoke English.
Tests written in English. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Yep.
I speak a different dialogue, okay? How am I supposed to know how you talk around you? You know what I'm saying? I need a job because I need to take care of my families and stuff. And I can learn. I really can. I promise you I can. I just need to learn. I just need somebody to teach me. I just need somebody to understand that I don't know your dialogue yet. This is where I come from, and this is how I talk. Like I did a video based upon that with Adele Gibbons. And you will be surprised how many people did not get that video. It didn't hit them. Like I'm like, Dag, did you hear what she was saying? This is just the way I talk. It doesn't mean that I can't speak your language. It's just that this is where I talk when I'm feeling comfortable. When I am able to speak my language, this is how I talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think
Well,
about this for you winning. Don't I have a different conversation on live than I do in private?
yeah, I mean, kind of, yeah, for the most part. I mean, I guess a little bit.
The language to barrier. Like, I don't use this to, I don't go as hard as, you know what I'm damn talking about, man.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's like that short the video we were watching by what was his name? Smiley, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Where he was talking about, he was raised in in a very professional black family, and he talked professionally, and people would say, "Hey, well, you don't talk like a black person. You talk like a white person." He goes, "Well, really? I don't know any difference. My dad owns a business. I watch him do his work. I go with him on business calls. I've learned from him, and that there is no real way to talk. It's just there's different ways to speak in order to be understood. And,
Now,
and
okay, now that's I'm glad you said that, because
Mhm.
connected with what Joe with talking just said is actually it's spot on. He's more formal and reserved on lives, and that is absolutely true. I try to
Mhm.
clean up a language, try to clean up my dialogue, try to clean up a lot of stuff. But I let it slip in every now and again, because I know the rules, I can easily bend the rules and you understand my dialect. So technically I'm teaching you how I talk, or how I used to talk.
Yeah.
Or whatever, my old thought process and my new thought process. And a lot of times that people don't understand, and this is why I say, even though I am saying something, doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it. I'm working out the problem. And I'm letting you guys help me work out the problem by bouncing it off of you, by arguing the point. And you'll argue the point back, and so on and so forth. And next thing you know, I'm like, oh, okay, this is rubbish, or this is absolutely spot on, or it needs more testing. But I can determine that after I've, you know, cross-examined it with you, Thomas, freaking talking, my wife, whomever. You know what I mean? It could be anybody. Hell, it could be somebody in the chat. Let's say, I don't know, Jacob, because that's the one I see real quick. Jacob says, sup savages. Yeah, what's up, savage?
What's up, Jake?
5 seconds later. But it didn't add anything to the freaking content. But what it did was it was just a random line and just saying hi, hey, what's up? That connection, just to let people know that you're here. Like, for me to listen to this guy
Mhm.
and get wisdom from everybody, right? Just like what I was saying with talking, it's phenomenal, because you're doing exactly what you was planning, you set out to do. You are breaking down the barriers.
Well, yeah, and this whole thing you can't tell. Like, there's this sort of different I think we should call it casual talk and professional talk, because basically, look, when I'm on here,
Casual
I'm
talk,
talking
put it back like
professional.
that.
I'm talking professionally too. Like, you behind the scenes, I talk a lot more faster. I throw a lot more dudes and mans into it because I'm from the beach, so I have a beach lingo,
You're
right? I
less
get a yeah, I
you're
get
less
more
accommodating. You have a little tippy tiffy bullet points. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay,
yeah.
all right.
Well,
He's under
that's
the
because I had
gun.
an hour till work, man. We had to get efficient on that right there.
That's
But
what I'm
I
saying. But you're
yeah.
talking to a creator trying to break down how I want you to. Like, I'm trying to show you how the process is, so I can get you. And you just like just bullet point it, man, bullet point it. And I'm like, dude, this is not a technical thing. And when he got it, he was like, oh, so I don't have to do this again? No, just a one time to see if we can get the dang thing going. And he was like, oh, okay, I got it. And then now he saw how it flows. And we're going to talk about this after the live, and we want to talk about how
Mhm.
we felt about it, what
Yeah.
prescribed, how we did it. It's just a work in progress, so we can make a
Right.
better show for you.
But yeah, you got you get your family language, you got your at home language, and how you speak. That's all good. But then when we get out in the world, we need to be understood. We need to be clear. We need to be able to communicate. So we make an extra effort to um to speak a little bit more clear, to pronounce our words better. Maybe slow down a little bit if you're like me and you like to speed up really fast. It's just whatever you can do to better communicate. I don't This whole idea of black speak and white speak and all that. Yeah, we have our cultural ways, but I just think that idea in itself leads to issues in communication, especially if someone's offended by the fact that, hey, you need to speak a certain way in a certain situation. It's really just about communication and being clear with each other. At least that's my opinion on it. What's up, Mad Cat? How you doing? All right.
Did better on those tests.
Or that blacks have a certain fixed IQ ranking,
Yeah.
and then you have black orphans raised by white families. In other words, a different cultural.
Yeah, but even before that, that study wasn't done until 1976.
Oh, that's a late
But
one.
even as of the time of World War One, the data show that black soldiers scored below white soldiers. And this is one of the reasons it's so that you need people with contrary opinions to be able to be free to attack things. The people who believe
Now
that
pause
that
it right
this
there.
is
Did you just hear
genetically
what he said? You need opposing opinions so you can be able to effectively attack things. I literally just said that. Literally. Oh, and to answer your question, what was it, Mad Cat? I think it was a foundation that was set up, you know, improperly, and it possibly was corrupted when it first came out of concept. But we're aware of it now. We're moving on. We're fixing it. That's what I think. It's a politically well answer. That's the best
Yeah.
you're gonna get. All right, continue.
Yeah, I have a different opinion about whether it's being fixed or not. I think the fixing it. Maybe we talk about the same thing though. I think
Mhm.
fixing it is a way of fixing it. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that too.
Yeah,
determined. They said, that's it. That's the answer. And they moved on. Some other people said, let's look at it more closely. And they discovered that black soldiers from New York, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and one or two other states scored higher than white soldiers from
Great point,
Mississippi,
Paul.
Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. And as I mentioned in the book, people's genes do not change when they cross a state line. Uh, uh, the problem is when you have people who are crusading for some idea, whatever the idea is, and they find some data that fits what they believe, that's the end of the story as far as they're concerned, which is fine if there are other people with contrary ideas who will look closer for something that goes the other way.
And then get listened to.
Yes, yes.
By the way, you describe in the book the Flynn effect,
Yes.
discovered by your friend, the late James Flynn. Can you
Yeah.
describe that? That's fascinating.
Well, the idea of the genetic determinists is that you had to rid the country of these inferior races, because otherwise the national IQ would go down over time, because the poorer people had more children than the richer people, and so that went on for here again. The IQ data there that the genetic determinists were relying on looked like it supported what they said. But Jim Flynn decided that, well, first of all, you have to understand what an IQ score, how an IQ score is arrived at. Whatever number of questions answered correctly is the average at a given time, is given the number 100. Because when you do these tests, especially with children, if a 6-year-old child scores the same as a 12-year-old child, that means the 6-year-old child is either much brighter than usual, or the 12-year-old child is a lot less than usual. And so you compare all the 6-year-old children, and whatever the 6-year-old children, how many questions they answer correctly, that becomes 100. And then similarly for all the other ages.
Right.
So you can do that. And an adulthood, at some point, you simply say adult and non-adult. All right. Now that sounds very, 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 very innocent. In
Hey
itself.
Daisy, what's up?
But what happens
Busy.
when people start answering more questions correctly than before? The next generation answers more questions. Now the number of questions answered by the second generation becomes 100. And so over time, as more and more people, black, white, and whatever, are answering more and more questions correctly, the tests are renormed. So having an IQ of 100 in 1925 is not the same thing as having an IQ of 100 in 1935 or 1950.
And this is exactly what was going on.
Yes.
People of all different kinds were
Yes,
getting smarter, to put
yeah.
it crudely. Is
But
that fair?
once Jim Flynn decided to go back to the raw data, not just take the IQs. How many questions was this? And he discovers that the number of questions being answered correctly was increasing by large amounts, roughly one statistical deviation
Right.
from one generation to the next.
Which is big.
Yes, and so the number of questions that blacks were answering, I'd say around 2,000, and having an IQ of 85 would have been an IQ of 104 back in 1947.
Mm.
And so all this information was being ignored because people took the IQ test as if that was a fixed number of questions I answered correctly.
And
which it
so,
was not.
you take the lid off that one. The Flynn effect
Shows that the opposite was happening. That instead of the national IQ going down, it was going up.
It was going up. And so we have this fascinating discovery that somehow or other the conditions of modern life that requires more abstract thinking,
Yes.
somehow it's
Okay,
bringing
can
in
can you pause? Can I answer
The
that
whole
question?
group was
Yeah.
right.
the
Yeah.
whole group is rising.
Uh-huh.
All right. All right. From the progressive position of
All right, bring it up.
Well, you want me to bring it back?
No, bring up the Mad Cat comment. All right, Gary Lamb, the most aborted children in liberal areas are Black Americans. My question is why? What happened with nuclear family in the community? If you ask me, I think the lack of ability to make an honest living, like just it's hard. It's extremely hard. So a lot of people have to either, buddy up at mom's house and, mom can help out a little bit. One might have to, work a second job or work from home. Like it's so freaking difficult when you're making so little money. So the option was, well, let's just get rid of it. That was been an option for many Black women. So it's like, this is the thing. It's like, it's a hard question because how can I possibly really answer this question? I don't know what it's like to be a woman in that predicament. Right.
Well, I
know
mean,
how
the other
it's like-
thing is that there also there's an extraordinary amount of those clinics in those areas.
yeah.
2, there's advertising for it. 3, it's become culturally acceptable to use it as birth control instead of as an alternative for emergency situations or a matter of timing in an unfortunate situation. That's the whole thing. I think what Mad Cat may be trying to hint at here. It's a little off topic for what we're doing tonight, but it's still an important question. And I think that there are people that are aware of these problems and are looking into it. I think it's well known that there's an extraordinary and an alarming number of abortions happening in the Black community right now. We'd like to see something done about that. And there's some very, very, very disturbing practices being done at these clinics as well that's been exposed. Without going too deep into that this evening, maybe we can answer a little bit more in the chat. But it's definitely an important question. But that's my answers. I think that it is being promoted. It's being normalized, and it's definitely
Mhm.
something that people need to take a hard look at and decide, well, is this the way we want the world to be? And wouldn't it be a better place if more of these children were being born? So that's my answer.
the whole group is rising. All right. All right. From the progressive position a century ago to the progressive position today, racial assertions have ranged from the genetic determinism that we just discussed, which proclaimed that race is everything as an explanation of group differences, to the opposite view that racism is the
Yes.
primary explanation of group differences.
Yes.
How did this happen?
Oh, it happened because a lot of people arrived at the same conclusion, and they had high IQs and PhDs, and that was the end of the story as far as many people were concerned.
All right.
I mean, a high IQ and low information is a very dangerous combination.
Yep.
Say that again.
Sorry, but you once
high
told me,
IQ
I'm talking
and
to a
low
Harvard man,
information
of
is
course,
a
I'm very
dangerous
conscious.
combination.
and you once
Yeah.
told me, Peter, The main advantage of earning a Harvard degree is that you never again in all your life have to be intimidated by anyone
got
who
it.
has a Harvard degree. All right. Listen, Tom, as I read this book, for the most part, it's objective. It's objective throughout. It's calm. It's analytical. But when you take on this modern progressive position that racism accounts for anything, there are passages in which you're angry. I felt that there are passages in which
Yes.
there's emotion that is very close to this. So let me just read a little bit to you.
Okay.
Median Black family income has been lower than median white family income for generations. But the median per capita income of Asian groups is more than $15,000 a year higher than the median per capita income of white Americans. Is this the white supremacy we're so often warned about? For more than a quarter of a century, in no year has the annual poverty rate of Black married couple families been as high as 10%. And in no year has the poverty rate of Americans as a whole been as low as 10%. If Black poverty is caused by systemic racism, do racists make an exception for Blacks who are married? I guess you're allowed to be angry.
Yes. Well, yes.
So, do you have the feeling when you're addressing this notion that racism accounts for everything?
Pause it. He must love interviewing Thomas Sowell. He is fascinated by him.
Right?
Like oh God, just look at it. Like he's like enamored with him. Like, yes, I get it now. It's like, oh my gosh, it hits so hard.
That's the Thomas Sowell effect, man.
Yeah.
That's
Wow, bro. Like
hmm
this guy is insane. Because when you put the facts together, you can connect the dots.
Absolutely. That's what he does. That's what he does better than anybody else.
Everything. Do you have the feeling that that the arguments are subtle, it's persuasive, you can forgive someone for buying that argument? Or do you have the feeling that it's willful, that the
Well-
case is so clearly mistaken that there's a willfulness about it?
No, I don't. I think that that people don't look for certain evidence, and therefore they don't find it.
Right. They just
And so,
Bingo.
on the basis of
They're
what
not
they
doing-
know at
once they're
a
caught,
given
they-
time,
yeah, mhm.
this may be very plausible. The problem is that you don't. What you really need are other people with different orientation who are skeptical and who will then look for things and find things that are very different from that. One of the things that I found interesting was the fact that there are various counties in the United States which are among the poorest counties in the country, and 6 of those counties have a population that ranges from 90% white to 100% white.
Appalachian
What?
counties.
Yes,
Kentucky is
yes.
You surprised?
A little.
Think about the lack of you know, uh, economy out there. You know, separated into sticks, low income, low education, low opportunity, and generationally.
Right.
Nobody's moving in there and trying to build those communities up. They're
Right.
leaving them just as they are. You drive through these communities, the houses look the same. They're all beat up and people just are kind of just locked into this generational poverty. You can see it in documentaries like the Tap Dancing Outlaw with Jessica White, right? You can see how the whites of West Virginia are living, right? And I've seen these communities, and yeah, they're stuck in time. They're basically stuck in time. Now in the cities where you have a large Black community in a poverty-stricken area, the ghetto, right? There's still opportunities there. There's opportunities that are around them, maybe just a few blocks away. So sometimes, or just a short trip away, where they can get out. There's a lot of help coming into those communities, trying to reach out And for those who take who take the right path and don't fall into crime, or unfortunate crime, or they're traumatized to the point where they can't function. For those lucky ones, right, there's an opportunity to escape. You don't have you don't have that opportunity in Appalachia and these poverty stricken small towns out in the country is often, and that's why you'll see that that's a higher those counties or whatever exist, right? Where the poverty stricken counties are majority white or mostly white.
Yo, that's crazy.
Hmm.
Kentucky
Yeah,
and Ohio, as I recall.
yeah, and but mainly it's the hillbilly communities,
Right.
and of course there's that great book that was written, The Hillbilly Elegy. It was on the bestseller list for more than a year consecutively.
J.D.
And
Vance, now Senator Vance.
Yes, and these are people who have faced zero racism.
They are white.
And they're white and zero racism. And also they're back in the 30s when they did IQ studies, their IQs were not only at the same level as those of blacks, they had the same pattern, namely that the young people, whether they were black or hillbilly, would have an IQ very close to the national average at age 6. But by the time they were teenagers, it kept going down and down and down because it's relative to the other people of that age group, and they simply were falling behind. So it was clearly not biological; it was social. But this,
I'll add to this. They've experienced zero racism, but they experience 100% classism.
Right.
People are always talking down about them, and it may not be
Yeah.
because of the color of their skin, but it's because of their economic class, and the way they speak, their culture, right? That
Yeah.
redneck culture. Hmm.
despite that,
Yeah, people have no problem picking on rednecks, right? You're allowed to do that all day long.
these hillbilly counties had incomes that were not only lower than the national average, they were lower than the average of black incomes for a period of half a century. It may have been longer than that because I only went through half a century. But in every study that was done over that half century, they scored lower. Their family incomes were lower than the family incomes of blacks. So obviously, there must be other things that cause people to be poor other than racism.
All right. People in low-income American hillbilly counties already face zero racism because they are virtually all white.
Yes.
Yet they have lower incomes than blacks, just as you were saying. In other words, some behavior patterns
Yeah.
seem to pay off. Now, this book is dedicated to fallacies, to showing errors in premises and
Yeah.
errors in analysis.
Mm.
It's not dedicated to an alternative explanation. Nevertheless, you've got this argument lurking in here that it's the way people live, it's the way cultural
Yes.
patterns. So what are the patterns that pay off?
Well, what? Oh my heavens! That's a much larger book than this.
Well, you've got time on your hands.
Real quick, Gary, Mad Cat's asking a question here. Do you want to address this really quickly? You're on mute.
Yeah, why not? So I am in process of appealing my account. So they have suspended my monetization until I figure out what's going on. But you can send it to the Cash App if you want. Because I really didn't want to, focus on that, but thank you for sending it. I'm about to send the Cash App there for you if you want to support that way. I think I got everything right.
Yeah, Mad Cat, if you want to put your comment that you would have put with your super chat out in the chat, we'll post it and read it.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
In terms of public policy, what does not pay off is having charismatic leaders depending upon government to do things. Because if you look what has happened to blacks before and after, there was a massive government effort on their behalf. the poverty rate among blacks, if you start in 1940 instead of 1960, because 1960 is the magic number for people who are saying the government, you see, did all these wonderful things and blacks advanced because of it. In 1940, the black poverty rate was 87%. By 1960, it was down to 47%.
That's dramatic.
But from 1960 to 1970, it went down to 30%. And in 1970, affirmative action was now in place. It went down to 29%. So in the 20 years prior to 1960s, the black poverty rate went down by 40 points, and in the 20 years after 1960, it went down by 18 points. But again, you have the same thing you had with what was the Ralph Nader effect. You see,
You started in 1960. You missed this.
You miss all of that.
So you've got in this book, this is a point you make again and again in the section on racial fallacies, that I started thinking of it. I don't think you use these terms, but this is not an original thought with me. I started thinking of it as a hidden century of Black progress.
Yes.
From emancipation with the end of the Civil War through to 1965, let's say, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 65, through the mid 60s, you've got a century, and you argue Black educational attainment rises.
Yes.
Black poverty rate drops dramatically.
Yeah.
And these are people who started with no property, overwhelmingly illiterate. This is from the moment,
Yeah.
the sort of the year zero in
Yeah.
1865 for African Americans. And they climb. And the other point that you make at a number of places is that the Black family is overwhelmingly intact.
Yes.
Right up to 1960,
Yes.
most Black,
Yeah.
go ahead, explain
Yeah.
that.
And not only do people take credit for things that were not their doing, they overlook the negative things that came in after the 1960s as a result of policy. In 1940, 17% of Black children were raised in single parent homes.
17%.
17. At the end, I forget the exact date in the 20th century, but after these wonderful reforms were put in, that quadrupled to 68% of Black children were being raised in single parent homes. Now, there's a whole literature on all the bad things that happen to kids who are raised by single parents, whether they are Black or white, American or British. The studies show the same things. One study said that fatherlessness has a bigger effect than even race and poverty.
Oh my God.
And certainly I
Oh
think back on my
my
own
God.
life, I was
Pause it there. Did you hear that? Winning.
100%. 100%.
Whoa.
100%. That's what we've been saying.
Just
huh?
remove the father. That's all you need to do. Holy cow. And it'll just take care of itself, basically.
Well, yeah. And then what does that make? What's the result of that, right? You get more poverty, more crisis, and then what does that
More
lead
crime.
to? More crime and the need for more government. And what do? They pander to those issues.
Yeah.
They create the crisis and then pose as the saviors. It's called a Hegelian dialectic, right? Create the crisis to pose as the saviors. Repeating that's that again. The cycle of abuse leads to the cycle of control. Right? They create the crisis to pose as the saviors.
Forever.
Forever and ever and ever. Over
Evers
and over
and
again.
evers. Oh man.
And
Paul,
we
like
beat
forever.
that. We beat that by removing the enablement. And removing the enablement means that we educate ourselves and our children on how to make better decisions and the importance of family. Right? That's how we beat them. It's not picking up a sword and charging towards them. It's beating them at the rigged game.
Right.
It's removing the enablement for that rigged game. They say, live a wild, free life. Don't care about family. Don't have children. Don't get divorced
agree.
easily. Yeah, you combat that by doing the opposite.
Right. I don't
Whatever they
agree.
want
I
you to
want to do
do,
opposite. Yeah.
whatever the establishment says, you do the anti-establishment. That's how you win the game without ever firing a bullet.
I realized how fortunate I was because even though my biological father died before I was born, I was adopted. I was adopted into a family where I was the only child in a family of 4 adults. These were not people who were out having an active social life someplace. The life was there in the home.
They gave you their time.
Yes, yes. And I remember years later when I became a parent, and like other new parents, I wanted to know, when is a kid supposed to do this, when he's supposed to do that. And I said, how old was I when I started to walk? And the lone surviving member of the family that raised me said, Tommy, nobody knows when you could walk. Somebody was always carrying you. But
so you had 4 adults doting on you.
yes. And that's what, and then part of the rise of blacks before was because of things that were done by blacks. Example that I think of a lot was a kid who grew up in Harlem at the same time I did. We were in the same school, lived 2 blocks from me. And we met many years later by accident on a street in San Francisco, and we talked about the old times. And one of the things he mentioned to me that because he had gone on, he was making more money than I was, and he would become wealthy, and he lived overseas
100%.
with servants, and he came back and moved out to the wine country and all that stuff. But one of the things that struck me, he said that he could remember times when he was growing up when his father would sit at the dinner table watching the children eat and not eat anything himself. Now, it's not, that's what.
And now the father isn't even there.
Yes, that's right. So those kinds of things are what do it.
Right. Social justice fallacies. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a major factor in ending the denial of basic constitutional rights to blacks in the South. But there is no point trying to make that the main source of the black rise out of poverty, nor can the left act as if the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was solely their work. A higher percentage of Republicans than Democrats voted for the act, close quote. So you're saying something here which is
Sacrilege.
It's shocking, it's heretical.
Yeah.
You're saying the Civil Rights Act ensured equality before the law. That was overdue, it was necessary, it was just. That's an accomplishment in American history.
Yes.
But at about the same time, we get the creation of a vast expansion of the welfare state, and it does people
Tomorrow.
Yes.
That's a
it
great.
harms
Wow.
the African American family. It leads to fatherless. Have I got your argument right?
Yeah.
And you want to stand by that?
Yeah. The other thing too, the Civil Rights Act was not what got blacks into professional occupations. In the decade prior to 1964, the number of blacks in professional occupations doubled. So this is not a result of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
All right. Tom, a few closing questions here. First of all, may I read to you, this is a note to readers from the New York Times in 2020.
All right.
The nationwide protests over racism and police violence have prompted a renewed focus on a long-standing debate whether to capitalize the term black. We here at the New York Times have talked to more than 100 staff members. The feedback has been thoughtful and nuanced, mind you, and we've decided to start using uppercase black to describe people and cultures of African origin, close quote. The New York Times capitalizes black, but you don't. Tom Sowell, how dare you engage in this act of defiance?
It is amazing the things that people can focus on. It may seem to be a big issue to the New York Times. I suspected the people who are being murdered in these big cities like New York and
Did he
Chicago
capitalize the
may have
W
a
in
somewhat
white?
different view of it.
Like, wait a minute. If he's capitalizing the W in white, then you might got something, but I'm pretty sure he's not doing that.
Right. No, they don't. I mean, it's a descriptor anyways. It's not a proper noun.
Hmm.
So that what they're doing is they're turning the term black into a proper noun.
Oh,
So that's even a more permanent stamp on things, right? It's even a more permanent uh decipher. It's it's the whole thing too. When they started saying African American, right? I think I heard like one of your earlier shorts with Miss Lamb, where you guys were talking about don't really like that, but I don't maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I've always felt like, and I think um I've heard many black leaders agree with this, black thought leaders, I should say, um, that it should be Americans of African descent. Like if we all
well,
put
I
American first, then that's who we are.
that's that I break it down as American who happen to be black. That's how I break it down. I don't. That's how I look at it. Like, I don't really African descent. I mean, I don't care about the label thing, whatever, If you writing a freaking piece on me, whatever floats your boat. If African American floats your boat, then fine. But don't get mad when I call you Caucasian American, if I
Right.
choose to do that. Is this, but I may not choose to do that because it's not my book that I'm writing. It's your book. So whatever I want to do in my book, I'm gonna write
But
the book
language is
the way I
important
wanna
though. Words are important, especially when we're
write.
trying to communicate and we're trying to describe things, right? And if we want to all be Americans and be treated equal as Americans, should we put American first? And here's the thing I say: if I knew a guy in college who was from South Africa, he happened to be white.
Latinx. There you go, King.
He happened to be white. So does he get the same rights and benefits as an African American? When they say African Americans get these certain uh, privileges or through affirmative action or other mechanisms like that? No, he didn't.
Right.
But he was an African American for real. I mean, literally from Africa and living in America, a citizen of America, naturalized, I guess we call it, right? He
Yeah,
literally
but
was the definition of an African American, but he was
all the
white. So
way.
he,
But see, I
Mhm.
wouldn't really care. It's
They care because they can control us through language.
right. I
They
don't
care.
like having to. I don't like to have to answer it on a freaking application. It is kind of unsettling. But I mean, I
Right.
get it. You got to
We have
know
to
who you're
push back
talking
on
to.
that.
You know what I mean? It's identification. All right. You're
How hard is it to reverse the terms? How
right.
hard is it to reverse the terms? And just
Right.
put America first. If you want to be American, put American first. If you're from Africa,
And
I
here's the
get
thing.
it.
How bad is it to do that? I was born and raised in America.
Hmm.
I'll be there for the rest of my life. I'm going to die in this country. I don't plan on
Right.
going nowhere else. I
I don't
mean, I
think
might.
anybody
All right,
considers
so let
you
me phrase that.
African.
I plan on dying in this
Right.
country. It don't mean that I actually will. You know what I'm saying? I might, decide to go to freaking Italy or something. Some shit happen. I don't know. But who the hell knows? But I mean, I plan on living the best life I can, and I'm gonna travel to all 50 states, even if it's just for a week. You know what I mean? I just want to see what it's like out there, meet new people. I want to
Yep.
do that. But
But hey, look, if you're gonna do that, one piece of advice.
Don't go to Jersey. Somebody gonna ask you to go to Jersey, visit them in Jersey. A long lost friend, don't go to Jersey. Don't go to Jersey. You're gonna get hit by a bus. Okay?
what the fuck? You're gonna get hit by a bus.
Yeah, just stay out of Jersey. All right.
Just
So,
stay
but
out.
anyways, man, look, the language is important. How we address each other is important because they use these terms to divide us, and they've been doing it the entire time.
Yeah.
Again, Walls nailed it when he said that whole idea of white is a made up thing. Like you want to define each other by our heritage, that's fine. We can all go by our heritage, but our heritage right here today is American. So let's put
Right.
that first. Let's put that first. But no, they want to put the color first, or they want to put a nationality that insinuates a color first, so that they can divide us, keep us divided. And we're about healing division here and about bridging the gap and bringing ourselves to a point of unity so we can see who the real bad guys in all this are. And
Right.
that's the ones that have been dividing us with language and with trauma and with other mechanisms that enable their corruption.
The importance of what is capitalized and not capitalized.
Tom, let me read a few single sentences from Social Justice Fallacies.
Mm.
I'll read a sentence. You tell us what you meant. Stupid people can create problems, but it often takes brilliant people to create a real catastrophe.
Wow.
That is so, my gosh. Think of the catastrophes of the 20th century. You mentioned the genetic determinant. They drew the conclusion from their reasoning that you had to put an end to certain races because they had what they called eugenics, but what was later called genocide. And so that idea originated with the progressives.
Facts.
And there was a progressive who wrote a book with that theme, which was translated into German, and Hitler called it his Bible. And so this Holocaust.
You draw a line from the progressive eugenicists to Adolf Hitler.
He drew the line.
Mhm.
He drew the line and wrote a letter, a fan mail letter to the author of that book, saying that that book was his Bible. And we see what that led to. During the 1920s, in reaction to World War I, which was so bad, the idea arose among the intellectual elites that the way to prevent war was to stop arming. You see, so disarmament was the way to avoid a war. No evidence made the slightest impression on them, and they blundered the West into a war that probably would never have happened because the totalitarian dictatorships that started that war were well aware that the United States, Britain, and France had an industrial capacity greater than theirs. And you wouldn't ordinarily attack countries that have greater industrial capacity than yours unless you thought that they were gutless and were foolish enough not to remain armed. And for 3 years of that war, the Axis powers won every single battle. The Western democracies lost in Europe and Asia, wherever they fought. In 1942, Winston Churchill made a speech, and he said, we have a new experience. We have victory. And when they won that victory in El Alamein in Northern Africa, that was the first battle won by the Western democracies in a war that was already 3 years old. And from that point on, especially when the United States came in and the American productive capacity was mobilized, then it turned around. Today, people who are trying to say we need to disarm in order to have peace don't understand in a nuclear age, you're not going to get 3 years to figure out what's going on. You're either going to be ready on the first day of that war, or you're going to lose it.
In politics,
Wow.
the goal is not truth, but votes.
Absolutely.
And why does that matter?
Oh, it matters because if you can get people to believe that their problems are all due to racists, you will get their votes. But if you look at a lot of data on different things, you discover that's not the case. It's very doubtful if all the racists in the country today have half the negative effect on blacks as the teachers' unions have, because the teachers' unions keep the schools lousy in areas where the people who send their kids to school do not have the option to send them to a private school if the schools are bad.
You make the point that in Harlem, there are charter schools that rent space in public schools. And there are tests. Well, go ahead. You know what I'm referring to?
Yes. In fact, there's a school. I thought the way to figure out the difference between the public school and the charter school, regular public schools and the charter schools, is to compare them in the same when both schools are located in the same buildings. So you have comparability. It's the same group.
Same neighborhood, same building.
Yeah, so everything. And when you do that, what I found was that the charter school kids in these low-income black neighborhoods passed the math test at a rate more than 6 times as high as that of the public school located in the very same building.
And the main difference between the charter school and the public school
Is the public school is run by the teachers' unions. The charter schools do not have unions at all in most cases. One of the most extreme examples was a school that I went to when I was in Harlem. And in that particular school, only 7% of the regular public school kids passed the math test. In the charter school, 100% passed it. They proficient. They have different levels. Proficient means you've passed, and there's a level above that when you've done more than what is necessary for that. In that particular school, only 2% of the charter school kids scored as low as proficient. The other 98% were in the top bracket above proficient.
Last question here. Last quotation, Tom. One of many things that no individual, no institution, and no society has any control over is the past.
Yes.
Why does that matter?
Because when we talk about groups and we talk about their environment, we usually mean their tangible current surroundings. But of course, all the groups have had different pasts. When the Irish, the Jews, and the Italian immigrants were coming to America, it was common for Italian and Jewish neighborhoods on New York's Lower East Side to be represented by Irish politicians.
Wow.
And why is that? Because if you look at what happened before they ever got to America, you can see that the Irish had reasons to organize in a political kind of way. The Jews and the Italians did not. Their circumstances, it wouldn't have made any difference. And now when they get to New York, they may be living in the same neighborhoods and so forth, and the tangible surroundings are the same, but the whole past of the three groups is very different. And even when the Italians and the Jews rise to prosperity, it's in different industries, it's in different occupations.
And the past means that we should never expect groups to end up evenly distributed across
the past. But even such a thing as age, people don't realize some American ethnic groups are a decade older than others, and some are more than 2 decades older than others. So the difference between blacks and white is not the largest difference in the country. The Japanese Americans are higher than the Mexican Americans by an even larger amount. Japanese Americans have a median age of 52. Mexican Americans have it somewhere in the 20s. 52-year-old people make more money than 20-year-old people.
Tom, would you close our discussion by reading a passage from Social Justice Fallacies?
Well, if I still agree with it. Do we want the mixture of students who are going to be trained to do advanced medical research to be representative of the demographic makeup of the population as a whole? Or do we want students with the highest probability of finding cures for cancer and Alzheimer's? Do you want airline pilots chosen for demographic representation of various groups? Or would you prefer to fly with pilots who are chosen for their mastery of all the complex things that increase your chances of arriving safely at your destination? Consequences matter, or should matter, more than some attractive or fashionable theory. More fundamentally, do we want a society in which some babies are born into the world as heirs of prepackaged grievances against other babies born the same day, blighting both their lives? Or do we want to at least leave them the option to work things out better in their lives than we have in ours?
Wow.
Thomas Sowell,
Amen.
author of some 40 books, including Social Justice Fallacies. Thank you.
Thank you.
For Uncommon Knowledge, the Hoover Institution, and Fox Nation, I'm Peter.
Wow. That was intense. I got to take a nap now.
Wow. No time for naps. All right, man. Wow. That was yeah. And what a passage. What a passage.
To
Echoing the
end
sentiment.
it with, oh my God,
Yeah,
that patch it was so good. It's like,
powerful.
oh, wow, man. Like, just like, oh man, don't ruin it for them. Give them an opportunity. They might get it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Ugh,
I mean, he's echoing the sentiment of this show right here, and this is why we dedicate this show to Thomas Sowell.
yeah,
You know, it's things like that, the things that he says like that, the knowledge and the wisdom that he puts out that's helping, that can help the world, that can heal the world. We need,
yeah,
that's why we're promoting this man and his works, and that's why Gary and I come here every week to talk to each other and to talk to you about these topics, because what Thomas Sowell is saying is the God's honest truth.
yeah.
Absolutely. What do you guys think out there in the crowd, man? Huh? You guys excited to get this book, man? I'm excited to get this book. I want to read it.
Me too.
I,
Numbphobia. I love my nuns.
oh no, don't make me play it.
Oh,
Don't make me play. I'm not gonna play it. Oh man, dude. Well, we just got a big dose of Thomas Sowell tonight, and we heard 2 different interviews on his new book, Social Justice Fallacies.
mhm.
Now, if you guys don't know what a fallacy is, um, I highly recommend you look into them and look into trivium education. As part of solution culture, trivium education is something we have to get back in schools. We need to teach our kids what fallacies are, because you see how easy it is for people who want to divide and want to disrupt and want to bring things to crisis to use fallacies to disrupt society. Now, just for example, I happen to have, oh God, that didn't turn out good at all. Never mind.
What
That
was
was there
that?
for some reason. I don't know, man. Let me get back our
Right.
background back there. That was supposed to be the fallacy list I had. I think I should go ahead and
He
delete
said a clunk.
that.
Wrong.
But I do have another way of showing you guys what fallacies are. Just so if you don't know what fallacies are, they are false logic. They're statements of false logic, and there's many of them that you'll find being used in the world. Now he's taking this to another level by pointing it out, the social justice fallacies, right? But he's created some new ones for us to learn from. But I do have a little chart here that you can learn about the top fallacies, and you'll hear social justice warriors using these fallacies all the time in their rhetoric, right? So let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. There we go. All right. I think I left the sound on, so it may sound a little wonky, but here we go. Top fallacies, like, against the man, attacking the speaker instead of the argument, right? How often do you guys hear someone on the for work basically under the influence of the establishment, right, using this type of argument? Well, attacking you instead of attacking the argument that you're making or the premise that you're presenting, right?
Right.
Appeal to authority, basing an argument on an irrelevant, vague, or dubious authority. They say, right? Appeal to emotion, persuading by emotion rather than reason. How often do we hear that one, right? That's basically what a lot of the social justice fallacies are. An appeal to emotion with no concrete evidence or supporting materials, right? It's just a matter of, you're heartless, right? Ad hominems, right? Jacob Peets. Hey, Jacob Peets, how you doing? Ad hominems, right? That's right. That's coming up right there. But
Right.
yeah, appeal to force, persuading by coercion or threats, right? Appeal to ignorance. It must have been true because it hasn't been proven false, or false because it hasn't been proved true, right? These are a whole list of fallacies and more that you can go look up. And if you have this little chart here next to you, here's a popular one right here: straw man, refuting an argument by attacking a weaker version of it. Throw something else, like you're trying to make a point, and then throw something else out instead of addressing your point that is not even related to it, or is a weaker version of the argument. So then you have to focus on that, and then you never get your answer. That you never come to a reasonable conclusion. This is the problem with false logic and all these establishment uh, uh, establishment narrative is based in false logic.
Like
Red
you
herrings,
said, it's
diverting an
possible
argument by changing the
not to
topic,
disagree
right?
with it.
What about this? What about that?
Yeah.
If you disagree, you're a racist, right? All kinds of these fallacies are used every day. I did an interview with a man named Jan Irving, which brought the idea of the trivium education back into the light about 10 or so years ago. The triviumeducation.com, I believe, or .org is out there. You can go to his website and learn all about the trivium and these fallacies and what real logic is, what true logic is. We True logic has been taken out of our education. That's why the social justice warriors, the establishment narrative, and so on that drives them is able to get away with this stuff. The mainstream media every night is dishing out fallacy after fallacy after fallacy. That's why it's so important when Thomas Sowell brings this up to realize that he's a man of high logic, right? He like we say here, rather know the truth than be right, and so he lives in
I'm
truth.
sorry. Can I ask you a question though? Um,
Yes.
how do you feel about just give me a quick feeling and you can get back to it, but
Oh
how
yeah,
do
yeah.
you
I'm good with that.
feel about the fact that all this is so easily used?
It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, right? Because it's like you can have a person believing their entire life that they're nothing simply because of the narrative you gave them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like that's dangerous. But what is the
And it's
narrative?
abusive.
But it's very abusive. But the person has to accept that narrative for it to become life, right? What if that person decided to say, just like you say, well, I'm not agreeing with that narrative. I'm scared that I might not be nothing, but I know I won't be nothing if I don't try. Right? So immediate right there, you're going to be way better off than you are, and your level of success is going to be completely different, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I didn't become a millionaire, but I sustained a family and I took care of my kids, I took care of my wife. I am not a statistic, although I might be down and out. It does. I mean, down right now. I'm not out. So it's like even that if you look at it as the highest place you've ever gotten to, you're doing pretty good, right? So if you've been able to experience that fall again and like, dang, I'm doing pretty good. Yo, it's just the narrative can easily be broken, is what I'm trying to say. It can, but it's going to require you to accept the fact that you chose to accept that narrative. You chose to accept it. You could have chose to be Superman if you wanted to. Communists have no need to be honest with us in debate. They wish to destroy our society at any cost. Um, I agree. I agree in some extent. They are well on their way to destroying us. Right. But the fact that we're able to do this is great. I just wanted to like hit that home because that really that whole video just it connected a lot of dots for me in our private conversations, you and me, right? And especially with Shelly and stuff like that. Just in those, wee hours of the night where we're just discussing things, and it's like, holy cow, everything's starting to wake up. Like you're starting to see that it's not this hopeless, massive nothing like we think it might be. It could just be some goofy stuff that they throwing in the water. Like it can really be that simple.
Oh, absolutely. But it is the fact that they're allowed to get away with it, and that we as people don't know that we shouldn't tolerate it. The pushback should be tremendous. And I think the more we get this education out there, the more we turn people on to Thomas Sowell, the more we turn people on to things like the trivium and what real logic is, the harder time they're going to have getting through their subversion. And really, that's what it is. It's subversion.
Yeah.
And that's a generational fight. Like, for all of us parents out there, make sure your kids understand logical fallacies. It'll make them powerful, like
Yeah.
beyond belief. No one will be able to get into their head. They won't be able to be roped in and subverted and drugged down and abused. It's really, again, abuse, right? So this is our mental antivirus right here. And this is the kind of stuff, information like Thomas Sowell, information like the trivia. These are the things that we need to be doing as far as educating our kids with, because that'll bring up, then they'll educate their kids with that. And you would tell them, this is important that you teach your kids this one day too. That's how we win the generational war, because it's a generational war. We're just the ones that are there here today in this information age with the ability and the talent to stand up and start the fight and continue the fight that was started before us, right? To continue this fight. We now have the new tools and the new wisdom to move forward. And shows like this, and other ones that are out there are that push the truth, the real truth. That's the key. And you guys are all part of solution culture. You're here with us right now. You're part of solution culture. These are things that you can be doing, even if you don't have kids. It could be helping someone that has kids about the importance of this, right? Because every parent is concerned about their children, right? Good parents, that is, and that they're concerned about anything that can abuse or hurt them. And so they're going to be interested in these topics when you bring them up. And there's ways to do that. That's not going to be too pushy, or just in general conversations. Hey, have you ever heard of this thing called the trivium? Hey, have you ever heard of logical fallacies? Hey, have you ever listened to Thomas Sowell? Man, I got some great stuff. I was just learning about his new book recently, and man, is he important, man. If you haven't heard of this guy, you should check him out. And just a little bit of that nudging will help people that are out there and really trying to figure out what's going on in this world. It'll give them the information and the ability to get out there and understand things better.
Right.
Is that right?
Well, it got a funny joke, dude.
Fallacy.
The funny thing about it was I was reading that comment earlier when he was putting it up. There's a movie called Who's Harry Crumb, and that's how I know about that word fallacy, because of that movie. Absolutely missed that John Candy. He was an excellent actor. Loved him.
Oh yeah.
That was one of my favorite movies of him.
That was a good movie. Well, I like one of his, Summer Reynolds. I thought was hilarious. And the guy was so funny. All the good ones, man, go too soon. All the good comedians do. What was I talking trash truth talking about Eddie Murphy and Charlie Murphy earlier? Charlie Murphy, I think, is just as funny as Eddie Murphy. It's just that they had different mentalities. Charlie got more into the party zone, and Eddie went home. Charlie hung out with Rick James instead.
Right.
Right. So, and he was also, I think he was in the military as well. So he was in the military, and he went party style instead of work hard and go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, but he still had an excellent career. He just chose his path the way he wanted to. He didn't want to work as hard as Eddie was. Eddie was constantly working.
Yeah. But I think Charlie Murphy was just as funny, man. I miss Charlie Murphy too, man. All the good ones go too soon, man. Oh man.
Like Blue, come on, man. That was oh my god. That was all Dave Chappelle and Charlie Murphy in that one.
Uh-huh.
He's like, he just smacked it. Hey, what's wrong with this? Like, why would you do that? Because that would be my answer. I'm like, I'd be so stunned. I wouldn't even know how to respond to it. Like, this dude just smacked the piss out of me. What's wrong with you?
Unity.
Like, how did you even think that was okay? Like, the fact that you thought that was okay is what stunned me. It ain't that you hit me. Yeah, it sting. Yeah, but that ain't it. It's the fact that my face is stinging because you thought it was okay to do that shit. That the first curse of the day. Father, apologize for the shit, but it got good to me. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, we just crossed 2 hours. It's all right.
Oh yeah, we're good. We're
good. Oh man. So man, yeah. Back to the book, man. I will look for some more interviews and stuff. We're gonna be doing a lot more of this Thomas Sowell review together, because there's so much that we can all learn together. I did do a bunch early on in this series, which you can check out in the playlist. But I want to go through a lot of it with Gary too, so we can both have the reactions together and talk about it with you guys
as soon as I can. We can even talk about some quotes, like a book club, if you will. Take a listen to this quote, because there's things that I'm sure I'm gonna pick up in the book that he's not going to be able to identify with regularly. He just picked the best ones, So that don't mean that they're the most important ones. It might be more important to me, but he picks the best ones, and that's what he does.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's so much more we can go through in that book too.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I want you guys to ask some questions, man. Just ask some questions about what we went over tonight or anything else you guys wanted us to answer. I'd like to make sure that we do Q&A here towards the tail end of the show. Give you guys a chance to interact and give us your thoughts, man. Because we're here for you guys and we want to make sure you know that and that you and for anybody in the rewatch crew, leave comments. We'll answer
Yeah.
the comments.
Yes, definitely can leave comments. Absolutely. That helps with the algorithm, like, share, all that great stuff. All that stuff work. Hell, even use the clip function. The clip function works as well. You might find a, clip that you want to send over to someone. You can do that as well. All those options are available for you.
Absolutely. What you guys got? What you guys got? Someone throw a question. Someone throw a question out right now. Let's go. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Maybe nobody has questions.
We're that good? We're that good explaining things? I think we're that.
It's possible. I mean, we had questions already, and we pretty much answered them within the show. You know what I mean? Like we had questions, but we answered them on the spot because I didn't want to lose my train of thought trying to wait for. You know what I mean? Like it might be an interruption type of thing, but it's a very good because it might have been something that sparked that person's reasoning for the question, right? So it's kind of hard to do it after the fact. I just got here, so yeah, like he's probably got a lot of questions, but he got to watch the whole 2-hour show to get some.
Jacob, you're gonna love it. You're gonna
I
love
think
it.
so too. I think it was an amazing live.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What took
Well,
you
all right.
so long to find Thomas Sowell? Okay, for me, I knew about him quite some years ago. We're talking about like right in the beginning of the whole pandemic and stuff like that. I've known about him. I never really like delved into him like I want to because it was a lot of a lot of information to consume. Got to read the books, and at the time, I probably wasn't even in tune well enough to even understand what he's saying now. So, but I knew about it. What about you?
Well, I came across Thomas Sowell just kind of like through watching videos, and when I heard what he was talking about, like I guess a catchy title caught my eye. Now, the reason why I just learned about it within the last couple in the last couple of years is because they don't want us to learn this kind of stuff. Like he's correcting history. He's putting in the omitted parts of history. They don't want that. They want their narrative. He goes against the narrative. He's highly anti-establishment and his information, right? Because it goes against the establishment narrative. So
Yeah, they don't
that's
like that
why
at all.
it was difficult to find out about him. But that's one reason I started this show is I want people to know about him now, and I wanted to be part of the solution by doing that. So what took me so long? They've curtailed his information. They've minimized it. It should be up as high as possible. It should be in every school. Like I'm highly in favor of putting the Thomas Sowell history into schools. Like his version of history, not his version, his work in correcting his history and putting out the truth about history. That should be what they're teaching, not this other crap.
That
That
should
the
be a
CRT stuff.
requirement, basically,
Right.
like so you can understand how this works. Like it was this book that I'm going to eventually come across. I can't remember the name of it, but it's this book that this guy wrote years ago, and I think that's going to be an excellent sideway into a lot of stuff as well. So we got a lot of content coming. We really got a lot coming.
Absolutely. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. Okay, so Caitlin wants Gary to sum up the brief conclusion of what we learned here today, especially for those doing homework while listening.
Okay. Well, a brief sum up for it is equal outcome is not really possible. To sum it all up, there are too many different factors that goes into play with a person's ability to climb the social ladder, if you will. There are many, many barriers. They may be internal, they can be external, they can be all kinds of variables that can change the outcome of someone's life. You know, they come to a crossroads and they say, all right, do I go home with Susan or do I go home with Caitlin? You know, and it's like, well, shoot, why did I pick those names? I don't know, because there's a Susan and a Caitlin in here, but I could have picked any kind of freaking whatever. But whatever response I got from Susan and Caitlin by saying that, they might have blushed a little bit because I said their names. Just and none of that has anything to do with the path that I choose. This is just the decision making part, how I want to go. And then I decide to go with Susan and find out that this is a different path than I would have. It's just it's so many variables that's there. Did I take that course or did I take that job? That's going to be a different variable, right? Did I listen to my coach or did I ignore my coach? That's a different variable. Did I get up on time or was I late for work? Different variable. So many
Mhm.
variables will determine how your life will end up, you know? And the worst variable there is not to know the truth, the right answer. And you might be following an answer that leads you down a particular path, but if you don't, you know, scrutinize it every now and again, you might wind up in a completely different life than you ever wanted, simply because you missed something and it was probably like 3 years ago that you missed it. You know what I'm saying? So that experience can hit you, you know, whenever. So there is no way to really have equal outcome, but equal opportunity to that outcome, you still have it. You can still fight for it. You don't have to give up, you know, and you can adjust your preference of what's winning whenever you feel like it. And that was a play on words, by the way, winning. So back to you.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna hey King, Kings, I'll get back to your question here in a second. But I want to put this one on the board. My main question is, how do we get everyone to learn these facts, accept them, and change slash fix the entire society? My answer to this is that you teach children because they grow up fast, right? Get that man's name in their head. Teach them that what a great man he is, right? And if they have a book report due, say, hey, well, how about Thomas Sowell, right? How about if they have a history report? Hey, let's reference Thomas Sowell's material. Like, get it into the young's minds, right? Let them grow up with this guy as a hero and understand what he's talking about. And that will start, I guess, the biggest catalyst to change. I would also say push to have this kind of education in some form put into schools. We're not quite there yet, but you know, maybe if we have Thomas Sowell and we could ask him, hey, you know, maybe some, you know, write a textbook that we can put into schools. We want to get this education into schools. How can we take your work and put it into a textbook? Maybe someone out there will get this idea too. Hey, let's write a textbook that includes the facts and the takes that Thomas Sowell has, right? Let's do that, you know, because right, we have to replace the CRT stuff. We have to replace this divisive false history that's in our schools right now, right? This is the problem. And then what happens? You go up with these kids that are being abused with this information, right? Feeling like they're less than, or feeling like are growing up believing they're victims, growing up believing color has something to
The
do
black
with
and
something.
white dog thing that we saw years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I saw that
Yeah,
years ago, you know. So I mean, it's clear that it's there. You know, black kid
that's what we
really,
want.
yeah. Entire school boards
Go
will
ahead.
have collective strokes.
Yeah, that's what we want. But continue, Gary. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it's cool. No, no, I'm just talking.
Okay. Okay, King. What's the answer to the Fermi paradox? All right. So, well, the Fermi paradox refers to an apparent contradiction between the high probability of extraterrestrial life in the universe and the lack of evidence or contact with advanced civilizations. Various theories have attempted to explain this paradox. I mean, there's the asymptomatic burnout and homeostatic awakening, I believe. Yeah. So it's like people proposing that civilizations may either self-destruct due to resource depletion or existential risks like burnout. Choose to prioritize the sustainability over self-preservation. The rare earth hypothesis, the theory that posts that conditions for advanced life are extremely rare, making the emergence of intelligent civilizations unlikely. There's the zoo hypothesis. I think suggests that advanced civilizations are intentionally avoiding contact with Earth, perhaps to allow humanity to develop independently. I think there's the simulation hypothesis. Yeah, that proposes that we might be living in a computer simulation. There's the technology filter. I think that there could be some critical step or obstacle in the development or advancement of civilizations that prevent most from reaching the level of interstellar communication. And I think the other one is the time and distance. So, the vastness of the universe and the limitations of the speed of light make it difficult for civilizations to encounter each other. So, the Fermi paradox is just like, it's a fascinating question. There's so many theories out there attempting to explain it. Ranges from nature to intelligent life, the cosmic distances.
Right,
and
exactly.
all
He's
that
a
stuff. Yeah.
big show off. I'm sitting here like, is he reading any of this? Or is he just spouting it out like
I'm just going,
water?
trying to remember it. He asked a question. I aim to please. Thank you for the $5. Talking trash and truths. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm just trying to help the and give the crowd what they asked for. Yeah, okay. Enough of the problems today, Renee. Let's get back to this. Kings, you can ask this all night long, right? Oh man. All right, dude. So what else you got? What else you got? Do you know the answer to
Kenya,
life in
I
the universe?
do. Actually, I do know the answer to that. It is called family. That's the answer from me.
All right, there's 42.
That's it. I
Thank
ain't
you.
got nothing else to say. That was it for me. That was hot. Not gonna lie.
Thank you so much for that. All right, that's 42. Nobody's saying
Like,
it's
because I
42.
was sitting here like, what the heck is he talking about? Because I've never heard of that before. That's okay. Now I want to look into that. Ask Google.
People say
The answer is 42.
Oh man, we could put a little bit of this on the background. Are we talking?
What?
Yeah. All right, guys. Gary Lamb, great show tonight, my man.
Thank you, sir. Truly appreciate it. I enjoyed myself with everybody. I'm exhausted. I've been up all day working on this channel, but I'm pretty tired. And that's all I got. Oh, we will be back here on Saturday, right? At 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will be discussing why real men can't handle strong women. I'm going to bring my boy 360 Smooth back to the show on Saturday. Hopefully we will have Wally P and Erica P to join into the live, because I'm sure they're going to be excited to hear what Dr. Heavenless have to say about the things that Tyler Perry had to say about light bills and paying women, why you should treat your man like he's your king of your castle, even though he don't pay shit. This is Gary Lamb signing off. You guys have a good one.
Yeah, man. And hey, and Shelly's gonna have a great show coming up on something about that as well. Talking Trash and Truths, our #1 awesome mod over here on Winning Reality, has her own channel, and you guys should check it out. She has a show tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. 8 a.m. Yep, Eastern time, called Coffee and Chaos. You should definitely get in there and check that out. It's a great time and great crowd in there as well. I will be back this Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for Winning Saturday Night with Strategic Eyes. It's going to be a great time. We're going to talk about all kinds of things and get to know each other even better. Great man, great time. Can't wait to see him. I can't wait to see you there hanging out with us. We're going to have a good time, and I got a hell of an intro for him. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sunday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Talking Trash and Shoots and myself, our new show called Old School Watch Party Sundays. And that is going to be, this week we're going to be talking about the food and water issues, right? The cleanliness of our, and the naturalness of our food and water. These are important issues that have kind of been brushed under the rug. And we're going to bring those back to light. It's such an important issue right now, more than ever. You wouldn't even believe it. And so you definitely need to be there for this. This is going to be important. I hope you guys are all going to be there, because it's going to be a hell of an education and a hell of a eye-opening, awakening night. And we're going to be covering the water, we're going to be covering the food, how it's grown, some of the issues that are going on there, and as well as some of the other initiatives they're trying to push on us right now. We got to do something about this. I hope you guys will help us out and be there and be part of the solution culture that is Winning Reality, this channel right here. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. All right. So I guess we're going to take off now. What we're going to do is we're going to send you over to say hey to Mr. Good Logic. So once you guys could say hey to my friend, Mr. Good Logic tonight, tell Winning Reality sent you. It should be a good time over there. I think they're watching the impeachment inquiry hearing, and it should be very interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, for my good buddy Gary Lamb, I am Winning Reality. You guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the Rewatch crew, and until next time, you all keep on winning. I'm hitting the wrong ones. Okay, here we go. This one's good. Keep on winning.
It's time to take a stand.